Alright everybody, and welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be doing something completely different. I'm going to take you on a deep dive behind the scenes tour of my desk. This is where all the magic happens and how we bring all these videos to life. So, with that said, let's get into it. Okay guys, so before we get started here, I just want to let you know that, I kind of always stayed away from this kind of video. I usually focus just on the villages itself, but I've definitely gotten some questions over time about different gear that I use and things like that. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to kind of clean my desk and then take you guys behind the scenes about, with all the different things that I use and how it's all possible. Not everything you're going to see today is a necessity, but I've been a lifelong musician and have collected so much gear over time. So some of it's luxury, some of it's very necessary, and but altogether it's just my workflow. It's not the most amazing workflow in the world by any means, but for my little bedroom, it does get the job done. So with that said, we're gonna start right from the hub of things with the computer itself. You are looking at a 2017 Apple iMac Pro. It's an 8-core 3.2 Intel Xeon W processor, and it's about 32 gigs of RAM and 1 terabyte memory, and that 1 terabyte is not much at all. Looking back, I definitely would have got more memory because I use so many hard drives, and then I still can't save everything. But if you're wondering, I do favor the solid-state hard drives when money allows. As far as software, I'm running the Mac OS High Sierra 10.13.6, and the reason for that is because some of the gear, I'm kind of an old school guy with some of my gear, so it's only compatible with certain I guess OS systems, if you will, and in my case, some of the interfaces and things that I use only allow up to the 10.13, so I stopped there. As for my keyboard, I use the standard Magic Keyboard rather, that comes with the computer. And then as for the mouse, I did switch it out because I don't like using the trackpad or a regular mouse when I'm, working on Pro Tools and things like that. It's kind of annoying. For regular use, it's cool, but not for Pro Tools. So I use the Kingsington Expert Ball Mouse, I believe is what it's called. Look, this is a mouse that I kind of always wanted. I was always favoring ball mouses. I've had them my whole life, but this specific one here is one that I've always had my eye on. I went against my instinct on the reviews because they always look so cool. But truth is, keeping this thing connected to your computer is a hell of a fight. Okay, so as cool as it is, it's $100. I love the feel of it. Can't stand the way that it connects because whether you use the Bluetooth or you use the chip, some way or another, I'm constantly restarting it. So that's kind of a bummer, but I do love the feel of it, so I continue to use it. Now let's talk some of my editing softwares that I use. I am not a video editor of any kind. In fact, I've never edited a video in my life other than these YouTube videos that I started, this past year. So with that said, I just use iMovie. I know a lot of people use Final Cut Pro, and I would love to have that at some point. But for now, I use iMovie, and I do some green screen effects, things like that. But very, very basic editing for these videos. However, the audio is a little more in depth. So I do write all my own music for all my videos. I am a musician for ever and ever and ever, so I enjoy doing that. And I also record all of my voiceovers through this software as well. It's all done through Pro Tools 12. I am a huge fan of Pro Tools. I have used so many different ones throughout the years, and Pro Tools is just the best in my opinion. The current version that I'm using is the 2021.7.0. Again, I know there's some newer versions out now, but with the gear that I use, I have to stop at a certain point, and anyone who is a Pro Tools user knows that anytime there's a new OS or some kind of update somewhere, it always ends badly. So, I once I find something that works, I just leave it. I get to know what I have, and I don't know, I just like that. I'm not too into change, so when I find a working system, that's what it is. All right, also I want to note that I do use Photoshop for a little bit of stuff, for instance, like thumbnails for my videos, things like that. I use the Photoshop 2020. I'm on the subscription service. I pay for it every month. And by the way, Pro Tools is a subscription service now as well. It used to not be back in the day, but it is now. Anyways, as for the Photoshop thing, I don't do much of the Photoshopping stuff on my main computer here. I also have a MacBook Pro. I think that's a 6-core that I do more of that stuff in. And I even edit some of my trailers for upcoming videos and stuff on that. It's a lot easier when I'm on the go, or, we're doing something and I just, want to work in bed or something like that. I can use that. But as far as the main stuff, it all takes place here on this Apple, and I love it to death. It was worth every penny, and I am so loyal to the Apple ecosystem. Some people will love that, some people will hate that, but for me, I am a 100% Apple guy. They release something to me, it's like doing God's work. So I love Apple and I support them all the way. Now, with that said, I do want to show you an extension of my system here that I use. I have an iPad Pro 12.9-inch 5th generation. I believe it's running iPad OS 14.6, I believe. And I use this for an extension of Pro Tools. So I do have an interface, which I'll show you here in a minute, but I like the capability that the iPad offers with Pro Tools. So basically, depending on where I'm at in my house and I'm recording, sometimes I record in different rooms, things like that, the iPad is completely wireless with Pro Tools. So no matter where I'm at, I can monitor Pro Tools, my input volumes, my, everything. I can even actually do some editing with it, EQs, things like that, record, and all in real time, by the way. It's just a super responsive app. So I love that, and I do from time to time keep it on my desk as well, just, for quick reach. I like that capability. I'm an old school guy, so I like to have things in the desk, not everything on the screen. And I know that's a little contradicting because it is an iPad, but I'm going to show you where that old school thing comes in right now. The next thing I want to show you is the interface, and this is a lot of you long-term Pro Tools users are going to recognize this in a split of a second. It was so cool when it came out. There were some earlier versions that were awesome at the time, but this thing is just so cool. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the DigiDesign 003. They are not made anymore. It's super, super old school. It was like the home version of the C24, which is like the pro level version of the board. It's huge and it's used in major studios around the world. Would love to have one, but in the turn time, we're going to be working with this. I love this board. It's just a workhorse, and the preamps in it are phenomenal. A lot of you that are familiar with the DigiDesign stuff, those preamps, come on, it's like Mackie preamps. They're just fantastic, right? Especially in those like VLZs, Pros. I'm going down a rabbit hole. Anyways, back on topic. Yeah, this is the Digi 003. It's absolutely fantastic. It's fully automated as well, so when something moves on screen, it moves here in real life, or if I want to move something because I love faders, it will move in response on the screen as well with Pro Tools. I can also flip through different screens, my editing screen or my mixing screen, all via the board. So that's that old school element of me. I love just the faders and the big consoles and, all that kinds of things. I want to actually like feel the music that I'm working on or the videos that I'm editing, and to be able to have those controls is just really a lifesaver. And I can fast forward, rewind, all the basic stuff to some really more in-depth stuff that is just needless for this video. So we're going to skip over those details. But anyway, I use the Digi 003. Absolutely love it. Okay, so building on that, this is the Behringer ADA 8000 Ultra Pro 8 Digital. It's basically just an extension of the 003. So the 003 maxes out at 8 inputs, 4 XLR, and 4 quarter-inch. This extension here allows you to have an extra 8 inputs. I love it. I use it more in the music production side than I do in the video side, but if I need the extra capability, it's there. And let me tell you something, when you need it, man, is it a lifesaver. So it's the Behringer ADA 8000 Ultra Pro. I love it, had it forever and always. I swear by them. And yes, I know they're Behringer, but man, it works, and it sounds pretty good, all things considered. So, there's obviously a lot more expensive interfaces and this, that thing, and the other you can have, but for what I do, this works well. So, okay, so we've covered the interfaces, some of the computers that I use, softwares, etc. I want to talk about the speakers now. So this is again a controversial subject. There are a million studio monitors out there, some for tens of thousands, some for $100. So what is the best? What do you use? A lot of it comes down to budget, right? Because if you can afford the $10,000 ones, then by all means go out and do it. But really, what you're looking for is a nice flat monitor that can really move the air. And the reason you want them to be flat, and what I mean by flat is in the EQ. So if you put on a regular pair of headphones, sometimes they favor bass, highs, things like that. They're built to favor different kinds of music. When you're mixing music or video production, you want a really accurate picture of what the input actually sounds like. So if I lay down a vocal track, I need to know exactly what it sounds like. And if my speakers are favoring low end or high end or mids, it doesn't give me an accurate picture. So as I'm editing with the EQs and different things like that, it's not telling me exactly what it really sounds like. So when I go and you hear it on YouTube, it sounds funny because to me it sounded good, but then because the speakers, aren't flat, etc., you get what I'm saying. So anyways, my speakers of choice today are the KRK Rockets. I hope that's the right pronunciation. Anyways, I was a Mackie speaker guy my whole life, still am. I have a small other studio setup as well somewhere else, but and that does have some nice Mackies in it. I do want to switch these out eventually to some Mackie, what are they, the HRs? I don't remember now, but anyway, they're really, really high-end studio monitors. But in the meantime, if you're thinking bang for your buck, you need to get something, what do you get? I like the KRK Rockets. Within reason, they're flat, they're more than loud enough, they're powered, and they're, now these are the 5-inch woofers. I like that, but it works because I also have the matching subwoofer. In this case, it's a 10-inch sub. That thing is a monster and gives a really accurate description of the low end. Let me tell you, you have to have a sub. When you're mixing, it is a night and day difference of a result when you mix with just studio speakers, just tops, or if you mix with a full system, right? So you get a little bit of the mids, a little bit of the highs, the lows, etc. And like I said, these are not the highest end speakers, so there's definitely speakers that have, tweeters, then the mids, then the, regular woofer and all these kinds of things. And then you put the sub on the bottom. But again, we're just focusing on what I'm doing here. So I have the KRK Rockets. I love them. This is the 5-inch with the 1-inch tweeter with the 10-inch single sub to go with it, all powered, and you can dial it in, of course, and things like that. The only thing I would note about these specific ones is that I noticed the mid-range on them is not exactly flat, so I find myself compensating sometimes in final mixes with the midsection. But other than that, the highs are extremely accurate. The lows are very accurate. And overall, bang for your buck, they're extremely flat and will more than get the job done. Okay, so ending on sound here, I do want to let you know that for headphones, I know a lot of people swear by mixing in headphones. It kills me to death to do that. However, I find that I do need headphones to do final level checks in my videos. So for music versus talking, for, the sounds of the houses over whatever, the studio monitors, at least because my room isn't soundproof and set up for all that kind of stuff, it's hard to get a real accurate picture of the volume levels and changes. So I do use these, and I'm going to screw up this pronunciation, the Barrera Dynamic, I think is what it is. Barrera Dynamic DT 990 Pros. They're really, really solid for leveling. Suck for everything else, in my opinion. I have a hard trouble, EQing with them or anything like that. So I would never mix with them in that sense. But for leveling, they are just masters for the bang for the buck. And without them, when I first started this YouTube stuff, I did mix without the headphones, and I would get messages like, "Oh, the voice wasn't loud enough, or it blended too much, whatever." When I started doing final edits with the headphones for leveling, it was a night and day difference on the overall mixes. So that's what I use for headphones, but again, only for leveling at the end. It would kill me and kill the videos and probably the channel if I use them for anything else. So anyways, that's just what my ears tell me though. Everybody is different. This is all interpretation, right? So you may love them. They work great for you and your ears, but in my scenario, for what I do in the room that I am in, because that plays a big part in it, right? If you have a room that's set up for audio, that's a whole nother thing. But in my case, there's no soundproofing. The sound's going to bounce everywhere in here, all this kinds of things to get the best, result for the production that I'm working with. I like to mix with the studios, with the Rockets, and then end on the headphones for leveling, and then boom, we're done. Okay, so something else I want to cover with you guys is the microphone that I use. So, being a musician, over the years, I've collected a bunch of different microphones, everything from your basic SM58 all the way up to those crazy AKG 414 pairs and all the different mics in between. I have a bunch of them and love each and every one, but they all have a purpose. Okay, so when it comes to voiceovers or singing, something like that, for me, I've found that it's not so much about the price of the mic as much as what your voice sounds like on that mic. And in this particular scenario for YouTube, I like a mic that lies to me a little bit. So for me, my weapon of choice would be the Samson CO1. I know that's a really old school thing to say, and they have an XLR version and a USB version, but for me, it really works well for my videos. I've tried using the AKGs, the SMB Shure mic, I forgot the exact name, is that radio looking mic. Anyways, I've tried a bunch of them, and I just happen to like the way that this mic sounds with my voice. When I add in the compression, I don't really even have to sometimes I don't even EQ it at all. I just do usually a high pass filter on it, because it's just, I don't know. I just like the way that it sounds for me. And like I said, it lies to me just enough. It is a phantom powered mic, so those rack mount preamps come in handy because they offer the phantom power. But anyways, it's a beautiful mic, and I do use, of course, a little windscreen in front of it and whatnot. But like I said, I wouldn't worry so much about the cost of a microphone versus just trying out a bunch and seeing which one sounds the best to you for your voice. You can go down to your local Guitar Center or something like that. They have a bunch of microphones set up. You can try a bunch of different ones. And let me tell you, I've experimented with so many on my channel, but for some reason, I always came back to this one. So I love it. It's great. And for the money, it's real cheap. I think this microphone's like $50-$60 used, maybe $90 new, something like that. So it's definitely one of the cheaper ones in the arsenal, but it just works. So I don't know what else to tell you. And I have two of them now. The first one I've had basically my whole entire life. It's a workhorse. The only reason I got another one was because in the event that it ever went out on me someday, I still wanted to be able to produce videos for you. So I have another one now, but nonetheless, they both work like champs, and it's the Samson CO1. Okay, so next up is the music keyboard or the MIDI keyboard that I use. This is an Alesis V49 keyboard. I use this thing in almost every single video that I've ever done. I use it for everything from weird sounds to, synth noises to even programming drums. I write all my own drums, but I can't fit a drum set in my current setup, at least over here. So I do have an Easy Drummer program. That's the actual name of it. And what's cool about it is it has a bunch of preset drum beats, but for those of you who actually drum, like myself, you can actually go in and write your own drums, and they're all the MIDI samples are actual recordings of individual drums. You can tune them, you can adjust everything you can imagine on them. So it's a really cool software. I use it basically every single video. I absolutely love it. But anyways, the keyboard's an Alesis V49. It's killer. It's not really all that weighted, really. It's really not weighted at all. But it's cool for what I do. It's not a full size, not like an 88 key. There are different versions of this. I think there's like a 61 or a 69, something like that as well. So you can definitely keep going. It has a couple synth pads on it as well. It's a really cool thing, but it works for me and it fits on my desk because I have kind of a small studio desk. So it really, for my needs, it fits well. So that covers all the sound kind of aspect of this stuff. Next thing I want to cover is some of the outboard gear that I use. I personally like to have just as raw as I can tracks going into my Pro Tools system. I like to have full control because if you commit to something too early by having too much outboard gear, especially me because I'm not super good at outboard gear, you can't really fix it. Okay, so if your settings are what they are when you record, that's as far back as you can backtrack. I don't like that. I like to be completely raw and then build from there. And there are ways, which we're not going to get into, about how you can hook things up so you can use them post versus pre. But anyways, for what I do, focusing on YouTube stuff, I purchased two things. I have the Art Pro MPA 2-channel tube preamp and the Art Pro VLA 2-tube compressor. I'm a huge tube guy. And so whether it's guitar for the Marshall amps, whatever it is, I love the warmth of a tube. And that is exactly why I went with these, because they're bang for your buck. There is a lot of cheap gear you can buy and it will sound cheap. This gear here is by no means anything crazy expensive, but as far as bang for your buck and getting the warmth of a nice tube, they just really are solid. So I love them. This is the only really outboard gear that I use. And I don't even use them all the time in full transparency, but a lot of times I do. I'll go basically from the mic to the preamp, add in that warmth of the tube, and then from there down into the compressor. And I just do a light compression initially because I'm going to do all my compression in Pro Tools. However, I do like to get some control of things before they hit my interface and things like that. So, you got to be a little cautious too, because there's preamps in the Digi 003 and, all these kinds of things, stuff for, real nerdy things. So we're going to skip that. But anyway, so that's really all I use for the outboard gear. And that's all ran pre, not post. The other thing that I do have is a tuner. It is a Korg Pitch Black. I have a bunch of different rack mount Korg tuners and a few different setups that I have, and I love them. They are just the most accurate. They also offer strobe tuning as well. So if you're a guitar player, you know what I'm talking about. But the Korg stuff is solid. And the cool thing about this stuff is that the Korg tuner really, it's hard to explain, but it basically wires directly into the 003. So while I'm working within Pro Tools, if I need to tune a guitar real quick, I can change an output digitally and it'll send it right to my tuner. But again, we're going down a rabbit hole, and yes, I know there's a bunch of ways to hook things up, but that's kind of how I do things for now. My setup pretty much maintains the same 24/7. I haven't really added or took anything out in forever. Again, once I get something, that's just what I like to use, and that's where I leave it. All right, so as we come to the close here, the last thing I want to talk to you about is the power that I use. I swear by Furman power conditioners. There's a bunch of them. There's definitely some cheaper ones and some really expensive ones. This one here is kind of like an old school average one. Again, I'm an old school guy, so I like a lot of the older gear, like old school Marshalls, Ampegs, whatever. I still like in the PA world, like the old school JBLs, the MRXs, the old school SRX double subs, and the Crowns, QSEs, all that kind of stuff. And let me tell you, we're just getting lost right now. So, gosh, if you're still with me, thank you. You must be into the audio world a little bit. So, anyways, look, I'm not telling you that all this gear is the best of the best. I'm telling you that this is what I like using, and it's semi-affordable, and I've collected it over time. It's definitely not something that I just went out and dropped a bunch of money on, because I can't roll that way. But over time, this stuff has served me really well. So back to that conditioner. Furman power conditioners are awesome. This is the M-8L Merit series, I believe. It's an 8-outlet unit. It has 2 lights on it as well. They come in handy, believe it or not, those little lights. So really cool. I trust it with everything. I use it on all of my different setups that I have. This one here is obviously for the studio stuff, but even on my, other studio stuff, setups and, guitar setups, whatever, usually they all have the Furmans. They're just killer. So I think this wraps up this really different, crazy video. Gosh, I know this is definitely going to be a sidetrack adventure for a lot of you out there, but I did receive, quite a few questions along the way about the gear that I use, and I just wanted to cover at least the main stuff that I use. There's definitely some other things going on behind the scenes, but if you're just looking for some ideas or references and things that maybe you could look forward to or check out in the future, these are definitely some great things to look at. And probably my favorite piece of gear, other than, of course, the Apple products, would be the Digi 003. It's an animal. I would just die for it. I absolutely love it. The automation is just so perfect. The preamps are killer. And the truth is, with all this outboard gear, as nice as it is, I've recorded so many videos directly into the 003 straight into Pro Tools. And it is just amazing every single time. I hope this answers some of the questions out there. Feel free to leave comments below if you're curious about anything. I love Pro Tools, I love Apple products, and I love the Digi 003. That combination is just success. So thank you guys as always. I so sorry we went down this rabbit hole today, but we will definitely continue pushing out those videos that we've all came to enjoy and love. So thank you guys so much. And as always, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next one.